People love to act bold when the cameras are on. But today, an overconfident influencer pushed too far. She walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with 10 million followers backing her up, convinced she could talk her way out of anything. And then she did the one thing no one ever dares to do. She called Judge Judy old-fashioned on live TV. The courtroom froze. The audience gasped. And what happened next became one of the most humiliating moments ever recorded. Because Judy didn't just clap back. She exposed the influencer in a way that ended her entire online persona. This is the moment she realized fame couldn't save her. The courtroom was already alive with a low hum of chatter when the young influencer made her entrance, a kind of buzz that naturally formed whenever people sensed drama approaching. She walked in with the same exaggerated confidence she displayed in her daily live streams, the kind of confidence that wasn't real strength but a carefully rehearsed performance, made for cameras and comments. Oversized sunglasses covered half her face, though everyone could still feel her eyes sweeping across the room with a silent judgment. She wore a loud designer jacket decorated with glittery patches and a luxury handbag, so big it looked like it belonged in a fashion runway rather than a courtroom. Every step she took seemed purposely slow, almost dramatic, as if she was expecting applause. And the smile she flashed wasn't warm or friendly, it was a smirk filled with superiority. The kind that said, "I'm famous, I'm special, and I don't belong in this boring place with you ordinary people." People sitting in the back whispered to each other as she passed by, not in admiration, but in confusion and irritation. Even the court clerk raised an eyebrow as she strutted toward her seat, dragging her heels loudly across the floor like she owned the room. She didn't offer a single polite nod, not to the officers, not to the staff, not to anyone. She simply acted as if every person there was beneath her, as if she had graced them with her presence instead of being legally required to show up. She plopped into her seat with a sigh loud enough for half the courtroom to hear, tossing her expensive bag beside her with the same carelessness she used on her live streams when showing off PR packages. Her friend, a nervous young man who seemed dragged into the situation by force, whispered something to her, but she shushed him instantly, waving her hand like he was an annoying assistant. Then she looked around again, wrinkling her nose at the courtroom walls. "Ugh, this place looks like it hasn't been updated since, like, forever," she muttered under her breath. Though it wasn't actually under her breath, her mic was already on. She turned to her friend and said loudly, "Why is everything so brown? And these chairs? Seriously, couldn't they at least get something modern? This is so outdated." A few people in the audience exchanged looks. This was a courtroom, not a TikTok studio, but she didn't seem to see the difference. She continued complaining, pointing at the ceiling lights, criticizing the judge's bench, even mocking the signs posted on the wall. "This is what happens when boomers run everything," she joked. "They don't know anything about style or aesthetics." She laughed at her own comment, completely unaware of how many people heard her. Meanwhile, Judge Judy watched everything from behind the side door before entering. Judy had been in the courtroom world longer than this influencer had been alive, and she recognized this type instantly, the arrogant kind. The kind who thought the world revolved around them. The kind who believed popularity was power. Judy had seen liars, manipulators, troublemakers, and performers. But there was something particularly irritating about the mix of entitlement and ignorance she saw in this young woman. Judy's expression stayed neutral, but her eyes sharpened as she observed the influencer's disrespectful behavior. Judy stepped into the courtroom, and the bailiff announced her entrance. Everyone stood up. Everyone except the influencer, who rose a full second late and with a dramatic roll of her eyes, as if the very act of standing in respect was too exhausting for her delicate schedule. When Judy took her seat, the influencer leaned back in her chair with exaggerated relaxation, as if she was lounging in her living room instead of appearing in court. She crossed her legs, pushed her sunglasses higher on her face, and let out another bored sigh. Judy's eyes locked on her immediately. She didn't speak. She didn't lift her gavel. She didn't make any expression at all. She simply stared. And that stare alone was enough to shift the energy in the room. Slowly, the influencer's smirk faded, just for a second. She wasn't used to people challenging her. On social media, people worshipped her or begged for her attention. But here, under Judy's sharp gaze, she felt a strange sensation she wasn't familiar with: pressure. She quickly tried to hide it. She fixed her posture, straightened her jacket, and lifted her chin high again as if she wasn't bothered. But deep down, behind that thick wall of false confidence, something inside her tightened. Judy continued staring at her sunglasses, not speaking a single word. The silence grew heavier with every passing second, and it was the kind of silence that demanded respect without ever asking for it. The influencer swallowed nervously, though she pretended it was nothing. She didn't realize that things were already shifting, that Judy had already read her attitude, her arrogance, her entire strategy. She didn't know that the silent stare was a warning, and she had no idea that the next part of the day would become the most embarrassing moment of her public life. What she thought was just another platform to show off would soon turn into the stage, where her entire persona cracked open for the world to see. Judge Judy's first question was straightforward, nothing complicated, nothing unusual. Just a routine opening meant to establish the facts of the case. But before Judy could even finish her sentence, the influencer laughed, an arrogant, dismissive laugh that echoed far louder than she intended. It wasn't a polite laugh, not a nervous laugh, but a bold, disrespectful one that carried the message, "You can't tell me what to do." She leaned forward slightly, flicked her hair back with a dramatic gesture, and said, "Look, with all due respect," although it was clear from her tone there was no respect at all, "your rules are kinda old-fashioned. I mean, this whole process is honestly, we're in 2025. Things are different now. People like me," she pointed at herself with a polished, glittery nail, "we're the future. We don't operate like this anymore." The courtroom went so silent it felt like the air had been sucked out. Even her friend beside her stiffened, closing his eyes as if he had just watched a slow-motion disaster unfolding. He placed a hand over his mouth, silently praying she would stop talking, but she didn't notice. The influencer was too wrapped up in her own confidence, too blinded by her online persona to recognize that she had just stepped into extremely dangerous territory. Judy leaned forward, elbows on the bench, her eyes narrowing with razor-sharp focus. "Old-fashioned," she repeated, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. She didn't shout. She didn't show anger. Her tone was calm to calm, which made it even more terrifying. "Is that your expert legal opinion, Ms. Influencer?" The influencer smirked, interpreting Judy's sarcasm as cluelessness. "Well, yeah," she shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "The world has changed. People don't want slow processes and strict rules anymore. We do things fast, efficiently, modernly. My followers understand me. They get what's fair. They support me no matter what. That's the difference between old systems and new ones." She tapped her nails on the table, already acting victorious. Judy blinked slowly, then asked, "Your followers? Are they your lawyers?" Again, the influencer shrugged. "They know more than most people," she said loudly. "They keep up with everything. They know when something's outdated." Then she waved her hand toward the judge's bench, ignoring how incredibly disrespectful the gesture was. "Honestly, this whole setup is ancient. Like, no offense, Judge. But," and then came the line that sucked every atom of oxygen out of the room, "so are you." A massive wave of gasps rolled across the courtroom. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Her friend's face went pale. Even the bailiff, who rarely reacted to anything, shifted his weight uneasily. But Judy remained still, completely still. Her expression didn't change, but the energy around her transformed instantly. It was as if the courtroom dropped 10 degrees in temperature. Judy's eyes, sharp as polished steel, locked onto the influencer with a stare that could dismantle a person without a single word. Every camera operator leaned in. Every audience member sat up straighter. Everyone knew something irreversible had just happened. Judy tapped her pen once, just once, but the sound echoed like a gavel strike. "Young lady," she said, her calmness turning into something far more dangerous. "The law does not change because you have followers. Respect does not disappear because the world has become louder. And responsibility does not fade because you think your fame excuses you from understanding basic conduct." Her words were firm, controlled, and devastatingly clear. But the influencer wasn't done embarrassing herself. Instead of reading the room, She decided to double down. She leaned back again, crossing her legs confidently, and said, "I'm just being honest. This whole thing takes too long. Too many rules. Too many old ways of doing things. My platform is all about transparency. People appreciate when I speak my mind." Judy tilted her head slightly. "Your platform?" She repeated. "Yes," the influencer said proudly. "I've built something real, something modern, something powerful. You wouldn't understand how fast things move out there. People don't want to wait. They don't want old-fashioned forms and boring procedures. That's why they come to me. My voice matters. People trust me." Her speeches got longer and more dramatic with every sentence, as if she believed she was inspiring the world with her boldness. But she wasn't inspiring anyone. She was digging her own grave deeper and deeper. Judy finally sat back in her chair. Her face gave nothing away. "So let me get this straight," she said slowly. "You believe that because you have followers, because you post videos online, because people press a button to show approval, that you are above the legal process?" The influencer shrugged again, a gesture that by now had infuriated everyone watching. "Not above it," she said, smirking, "just different. The world needs to catch up." "Oh," Judy said softly, "I assure you, the world has already caught up. It's you who is about to get a very modern reality check." Then she paused. The room held its breath. Judy's voice then softened to a dangerously quiet tone. "You said I am old-fashioned. Well, I will tell you what is truly old-fashioned: your belief that confidence without knowledge is power, that arrogance without wisdom is influence, and that disrespect toward authority is bravery." The influencer's smirk flickered. Just for a moment, a tiny crack in her polished mask. She tried to recover, brushing it off with another laugh. "I'm not trying to disrespect you, Judge. I'm just saying, the world is different now. People like you need to adapt." Judy rested her hands on the bench and said, "Young lady, you have absolutely no idea how adapted I am. In fact, I am far more informed about you than you realize." The influencer's eyebrows shot up. "What does that mean?" she asked, suddenly unsure of herself. Judy didn't answer. She simply pulled a folder closer to her, tapping the cover once, while maintaining steady eye contact. And that one simple movement, so small, so controlled, sent a cold shiver down the influencer's spine. For the first time since she walked into that courtroom, she felt something she had not felt in years. Doubt. Her confidence began to wobble. Her friend leaned closer and whispered, "Stop talking." But it was too late. The damage was already done. Her words, her attitude, her insults, they had all built up into a wall she was about to crash into headfirst. What she thought was power was actually a ticking bomb. She was about to learn that Judge Judy wasn't old-fashioned. She was prepared, she was informed, and she was ready to expose the truth in a way the influencer never saw coming. The influencer watched nervously as Judge Judy slowly opened the folder resting on her desk, her fingers moving with a calmness that made the tension in the room grow heavier with every second. The influencer tried to hold onto her smirk, lifting her chin as if she still had everything under control. But even she could feel the subtle tremble inside herself. She wasn't used to being challenged. Online, no one questioned her. People who tried to correct her usually got blocked or ignored, and her audience praised her no matter what she said. But here, in Judy's courtroom, the rules were different. She wasn't the center of attention by choice, she was the center of attention, because every person in the room could see the storm forming in Judge Judy's expression. Judy pulled out the first sheet of paper, set it in front of her, and cleared her throat lightly. The influencer leaned slightly forward, curiosity mixing with fear. The paper wasn't just any document, it was a compilation of complaints, reports, screenshots, and statements that had been collected quietly, thoroughly, and legally. Judy lifted her eyes and said, "Ms. Influencer, before I address this case, I believe it's important to understand who you are and how you operate." The influencer swallowed hard. Her friend beside her whispered, "Just stay quiet, please." But silence was no longer a shield she could use. Judy was already beginning. Judy held up a printed screenshot. "This," she said, "is a post from your social media, correct?" The influencer blinked. She recognized it instantly. It was a live stream clip of her mocking customer service workers, calling them slow, clueless, and unnecessary. Her face turned a shade paler. I mean, that was just entertainment, she stuttered. Judy raised an eyebrow. Entertainment, she repeated. Public humiliation is your version of entertainment. The influencer waved her hands frantically. It's just content. People like drama. They like honesty. Judy placed the screenshot down. No, she replied severely. People like kindness. Something you seem to misunderstand entirely. Then she picked up another document. This, Judy continued, is a complaint filed by a hotel after you refused to pay for damages you caused. During a sponsored stay, the influencer's eyes widened. Her friend shut his eyes, praying she wouldn't try to defend herself again. But she did. They exaggerated that. Besides, the hotel got tons of exposure from me. I boosted their brand. They should have been thanking me. Judy stared at her with a level of disappointment that felt like 1,000-pound weight. You are mistaken, she said firmly. Respect is not optional. Responsibility is not negotiable. You do not get to destroy property and then hide behind the excuse of exposure, like it is currency. The influencer's breathing grew uneven now. Her confident posture deflated just slightly as Judy continued pulling out more documents. This is a report from a small business owner you mocked online. After they refused to give you free products, the influencer's voice cracked. They messaged me first. They wanted marketing. Judy held up a hand. Enough. I am not interested in your excuses. I am interested in the truth. And then Judy delivered the blow that shook the entire room. She pulled out a printed transcript of a private message one the influencer didn't expect to ever see in a courtroom. Judy held it in her hand and said, "This is a message you sent to the plaintiff in this very case." The influencer froze completely. Her eyes darted to the paper, and she knew instantly which message it was. She remembered typing it quickly one night, laughing with her friend as she wrote it. The message read, "Don't waste my time. I have millions watching me. I can ruin you in one video." The influencer opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Judy placed the paper down slowly. "Is this your idea of modern influence?" she asked, threatening people, using your followers as weapons, believing fame allows you to intimidate anyone who disagrees with you. The influencer's lips trembled now. Her eyes glistened, not with regret, but with fear. Fear of the truth unfolding in front of her. Fear of being exposed. Fear of losing control. Judy didn't stop there. She leaned forward, her voice calm and cold. "You called me old-fashioned, but what I see before me is a young woman who has mistaken cruelty for confidence, who has mistaken attention for achievement, who has mistaken followers for friends, and who has mistaken fame for immunity." The influencer bit her lip, her entire posture collapsing. She no longer sat boldly. She no longer smirked. Her sunglasses were off, and for the first time in the entire day, she looked like a regular young woman, scared, overwhelmed, and painfully unprepared. Judy continued, "Let me explain something very clearly. The law is not outdated. Respect is not outdated. Accountability is not outdated. What is outdated is your belief that your online persona protects you from consequences." The influencer's throat burned. She had never, not once, been spoken to like this. Not by a teacher, not by her parents, not by anyone who mattered. People always backed down when she raised her voice. People always apologized to her. People always wanted her approval. But Judge Judy wasn't afraid of her. Judy wasn't impressed. Judy wasn't intimidated. Judy was exposing the version of her she worked so hard to hide. As the courtroom watched, the influencer's confidence drained like water slipping through cracked hands. Her friend put a shaky hand on her shoulder, whispering, "Just apologize. Just tell her you're sorry." But the influencer couldn't speak. She was stuck between pride and panic, trapped by her own choices. For years, she had built a world in which she was untouchable. But now, in this room, she was face to face with something she had never encountered before: real-world consequences. Judge Judy looked at her with a final, sharp glance and said, "You built your life online. But here, in this courtroom, reality wins, and reality is coming for you whether you like it or not." A tear slipped down the influencer's cheek before she could stop it. The room grew silent as every person witnessed the collapse of her false superiority. And at that moment, she finally understood the world wasn't old-fashioned. She was. Judge Judy let the silence hang in the air for a long moment, long enough that the influencer felt every heartbeat pounding in her chest like a drum she couldn't silence. The courtroom was so still that even the faint shuffle of someone adjusting in their seat sounded loud. Judy folded her hands together and took a slow breath, her eyes never leaving the influencer's trembling face. "Now," she said calmly, "we return to the actual case." The influencer blinked, remembering suddenly that this wasn't just a lecture, it was a legal matter. Once she had come into arrogantly assuming she would win simply because she was famous. But the evidence Judy had laid out had reshaped the entire tone of the courtroom. Judy continued, "The plaintiff claims you refused to pay for services you agreed to, then attempted to publicly shame them when they insisted on payment. You threatened their business and reputation, then weaponized your followers against them." The influencer's throat tightened again, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "I didn't mean to ruin anything," she muttered, but Judy cut her off swiftly. "Intent does not erase impact," she said sharply, "and your actions were deliberate, calculated, and malicious." The influencer's friend lowered his head in embarrassment. Everyone could see the truth now. This wasn't confidence. This was immaturity wrapped in a shiny filter. Judy pulled the plaintiff's statement from the file. "This person trusted you," she said, her eyes piercing. "They believed you when you said you would promote their business in exchange for their work. You took the service, but when they asked for what was promised, you tried to destroy them publicly." The influencer felt her stomach twist into knots. She had done that, and she had done it casually, carelessly, as if people were chess pieces she could move without consequence. Judy placed the statement down and said, "Your influence is not a shield. Influence is responsibility, and you have failed catastrophically at that responsibility." The influencer felt tears spill again, but this time she didn't bother wiping them. Every wall she had built around herself, her pride, her persona, her bravado was cracking apart. For the first time, she didn't feel like an influencer. She felt like a human being facing the truth of her own mistakes. Judy leaned back and delivered her ruling with steady authority. "You will pay the full amount owed to the plaintiff," she said. "Additionally, due to the public harm you caused through your reckless online behavior, you will also pay additional damages." The influencer's mouth fell open. "Damages?" she whispered. Judy's tone sharpened. "Yes, you used your platform to bully, intimidate, and mislead thousands of people, many of whom targeted this plaintiff because of your influence. That is not modern. That is cowardly." The influencer covered her face with her hands, realizing she had boxed herself into a corner she could not talk her way out of. Judy continued, "Let today be the moment you finally learn something. Your followers may cheer for your chaos, but the real world does not. The real world demands accountability. The real world demands maturity. And the real world does not bend for you simply because a camera is pointed in your direction." The influencer lowered her hands slowly, her mascara smudged, her expression small and broken. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words were genuine but incomplete. Judy gave a slow nod. "Apologizing is a start," she said, "but growth takes more than a single moment of regret. It takes change, real change, not the kind you post for likes, not the kind you script for engagement, real change that starts when no one is watching." The courtroom fell silent again as Judy gathered her papers. The influencer stared at the floor, her chest rising and falling with shaky breaths. She had walked into the courtroom believing she was untouchable, modern, superior. She had mocked the judge, believing Judy was outdated. But now she realized the truth. Judy wasn't old-fashioned. Judy was timeless, sharp, wise, and rooted in values that didn't expire. Respect wasn't old. Integrity wasn't old. Accountability wasn't old. They simply didn't trend on social media, and that was why the influencer had dismissed them. Judy stood from her bench, giving one final look toward the influencer. "I hope," she said softly but firmly, "that after today, you choose to use your platform to lift people up instead of tearing them down." Then she nodded at the bailiff. "We're done." The gavel struck. echoing like a final lesson, sealing itself into the influencer's heart. As the courtroom emptied, the influencer remained seated for a moment, unable to move. Her friend touched her arm gently. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's go." She nodded weakly and stood, but before leaving, she turned back for one last look at the empty judge's bench. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel powerful or admired or larger than life. She felt humbled, awakened, and strangely relieved, because somewhere deep inside, she knew Judy was right. This was the moment she needed, even if it hurt. She walked out of the courtroom quietly, her steps slower, her pride shaken, but her understanding finally growing. She had come in mocking Judge Judy as old-fashioned. She left realizing that wisdom never gets old. If this story moved you, make sure you don't miss the next one. Like and subscribe to HD Stories for more powerful real-life lessons.